Okay, so going back to Donald Trump's interview on Meet the Press here, where he was interviewed by Kristen Welker, I do believe is the host of the show now. It used to be Chuck Todd, the guy with two first names, who looked like Larry the Cable Guy if he, dressed up in dapper. But now they had this interview. They talked about, what his first 100 days of office is going to look like. And they go into discussion about pardons because, as you know, now with Joe Biden pardoning not only his own son for a decades-long criminal record that not only covers up Hunter Biden's scandalous misbehavings on a global scale, but also the crime syndicate of the Biden family, Joe Biden's crimes in particular, he's also pre-pardoning individuals within the government who should be investigated. People like Fauci, people like Adam Schiff, people like Liz Cheney. These are notorious figures that should be prosecuted, that should be investigated, but they're giving pre-pardons to these people to cover them up. Why would you give a pre-pardon to someone if they didn't have some sort of criminality to deflect? And they're doing it purposely because they know that Trump, having people like Kash Patel as the head of the FBI, is maybe looking into pursuing that. But here's Donald Trump, because everybody keeps saying that this guy, this game show host, who was already president beforehand from 2016 to 2020, is somehow going to further divide this country, as we're already seeing the divide of the country under Joe Biden. And here's what Donald Trump said about that rhetoric.
It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No. Why would I do that? But let me just tell you, when you say the country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the president.
But you're going to be the president.
No.
So you notice how they try to change, they're trying to steer this topic and talking about how divisive the nation has, how divided the country is, how hyper-partisan and political everything has become, and how we're demonizing half the population, which, yes, it was definitely under Joe Biden. Joe Biden personally demonized half the country. That was the whole intent of January 6th. That was the whole intent of his one speech where it was the red background, and he called them domestic terrorists. He was trying to criminalize and penalize people that were making a political movement in stature of Donald Trump because it went against the establishment. They had federal agents posing as MAGA supporters to storm in the Capitol. That was the whole intention of this. But they're trying to steer the conversation directly at Trump and put the blame on him because somehow he still has not conceded the 2020 election. Even though he did pass the baton to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the current president right now, or at least acting to be the president. We don't even know who's really in control of the country. I would say it's Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan at this point, but who really knows who's running this show? And they're trying to frame this on him. They're trying to put the blame on him. Well, you didn't concede the 2020 election. That's somehow dividing the country. As if that didn't occur in 2016 when Hillary Clinton did the same thing. Or in 2000 when people were skeptical about that election. We're allowed to be skeptical of those elections, but not 2020. And that is very interesting. And that's why more and more people are skeptical of that. Why is it that every other election we're allowed to criticize and say it's rigged, but not 2020? So here's more of this.
I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president. I'm not. And he has been a divider. And you know where he divided it more than anything else, and it probably backfired on him, I think definitely, is weaponization. When he weaponized the Justice Department and he went after his political opponent, me, he went after his political opponent violently because he knew he couldn't beat him. And I think it really was a bad thing. And it really divided our country.
Sir, Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they are going around stealing elections, why
when you
didn't
say
they
Democrats have control now
of the White House?
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election? Since they have more power now.
Because I think it was too big to rig.
So you won't...
Too big to rig.
To the people who say...
So she asks, why did the Democrats then, if you're proposing that they rigged 2020, why aren't they rigging the 2024 election? Why didn't they rig it for Kamala Harris? Well, I would argue he says it's too big to rig. But I would argue this, that not only did COVID happen, which played in favor of potentially, I'm not, I can't really address this. I'm just speculating on this, that there was possibility of rigging the 2020 election. COVID was definitely favorable of that. But also the fact, look at Kamala Harris's favorability within the Democratic establishment. Because right now, the people within the Democratic Party, the Democratic insiders, hate Kamala Harris. They hated Kamala Harris. They even hate her more because they spent billions of dollars in wasted money that now they owe, the party now owes to the people for hiring a bunch of celebrities for shammy appearances to get people like Oprah on stage and Tyler Perry and Eminem to go on stage in support of Kamala Harris for nothing. Nothing. And now these Democrat insiders are so angered by Kamala Harris. Why would you want to support her? Why would you want to rig the election for someone you find insufferable? Which they found that with Kamala Harris. They also found that with Joe Biden. That's why they tried to kick him out of office. That's why they did the coup to try and install Kamala Harris, because they thought Kamala Harris had a better shot of being the zen towards the imperialist class of the establishment and the oligarchy. And it turns out she's just an idiot. So that would be my argument, that you had COVID on your side to make it easier. And also the fact that the Democrats, the insiders within the Democratic Party, also hated Kamala Harris. And she keeps harping on the fact that, it's people like Trump that are pushing the divide. But yet, here's just an example that this montage has gone viral for a couple of years now. This is after 2016. And when Donald Trump was president and was trying to hopefully unite people, there were some flaws, there were some mistakes. But here's what the Democrats were doing when they weren't control of the government, when they didn't seize power. And were they bringing rhetoric that was trying to bring people together? No. They did the exact opposite. And here's what they said.
Of the country, maybe there will be. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him. Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look, as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
So, do you think that's going to unite people? Do you think that's a winning argument? Do you think that, putting the pressure on Trump that he didn't concede the 2020 election, which, by the way, who's the president right now? As he stated, who's the president right now? If he didn't concede the election, if he's such a threat to democracy, why would he voluntarily give the baton off to Joe Biden? And exactly the opposite happened. That the Democrats, the anti-Trumpers, the people within the establishment, they're the ones doing the cult of the divide. They're the ones that are diminishing the unity of the United States. And they purposely do that intentionally to cause havoc, to cause destruction, to cause this amount of chaos, to undermine the population so that the establishment could storm in with authoritarian measures, demonize half its population as domestic terrorists, put in censorship policies that are absolutely a complete disgrace to the Constitution and civil rights of Americans, and do this unjust warfare on their own people. And Kristen Welker of NBC News, well, you didn't concede the election. So that's why you're such a divider. You're such a divisive monster because you didn't concede the election. But not mention anything about this. So here's even this here. Here's Bill Maher on his podcast show. This is him with Zachary Levi, who's an actor. I don't know many of his roles. I think he's in the Marvel movie. One of the Marvel movies. I don't pay attention to his career. You can find him on IMDb. But here he is on Bill Maher's show, and Bill Maher, while he was correct about COVID, and I did give credit to some of that, or I do give credit to some other things that he's been correct about, Bill Maher is still that typical liberal shit-lid dumbass because he's been the Hollywood specter for many years. He's been a millionaire, coasting on his life and on his show on HBO, and now doing this podcast. Does not understand the people, still does not understand, still thinks Trump is a threat, still think that he's going to get canceled when Trump becomes president, yada, yada, yada. And now here he is going to pounce on Zachary Levi when Zachary Levi knows that Bill Maher is bullshitting and bullshitting his own audience. So listen to this.
Bullshit that they tried to. And again, this is the main difference between the left and the right here. When the left loses an election, yes, they grumble about it and they say things they shouldn't, like he's a.
When the left loses elections, they just grumble. They just grumble. They go to their rooms, they do a yoga pose, and they're just, they're kind of passive aggressive to it. Well, we just saw that they weren't passive aggressive. We just saw top Democrats advocating for violence, advocating for assault, advocating for not only the potential assassination of the president, but advocating to punch supporters. I don't think that was lightly took, as Bill Maher wants you to believe. Let me play that again.
It's bullshit that they tried to. And again, this is the main difference between the left and the right here. When the left loses an election, yes, they grumble about it and they say things they shouldn't, like he's an illegitimate president. They don't actually try to stay in office. Kamala Harris.
Hang on a second. Bill.
So that the whole proposal of why they did January 6th, the reason why they did all these unlawful tactics on Donald Trump, especially during the election year, was purposely for that. So they can undermine his presidential campaign. They could discredit him from running in the race. They can cut him out and regain some sort of power. It's for the establishment. It's not a left versus right issue. It's the fact that the establishment has some sort of vendetta on Donald Trump, even though that Donald Trump governs no differently than any other establishment person. We see it right now with his cabinet picks. He's going to be, sadly, another kind of war hawk persona, even though he campaigned to be against the war. We hope that still stands, but it doesn't look like that. Their whole indoctrination is trying to vilify people that step outside the line. The same thing they did with Bobby Kennedy Jr., the same thing they're doing with Tulsi Gabbard, the same thing they did with Bernie Sanders. And the only difference is that Bernie Sanders tucked his tail in and became a cuck to the establishment. Joe Biden is a friend of mine. And why is he saying that? Because he doesn't want the dirt revealed about his wife and his wife's financial backings to college institutions in Vermont. Because there's a bit of corruption scandal with that. So he tucked his tail in, he kissed up to the establishment, and Donald Trump is kind of that person that steps a toe outside the line, and they can't have that. So now Zachary Levi is going to step in and go, wait a second.
If Hillary Clinton and the Democrats got their way when they were challenging Trump and saying he was an illegitimate president in 2016, and they somehow got that bullshit Steele dossier to somehow, which was, by the way, all completely nonsense.
You watch too much Fox News.
No, I don't watch Fox News at all.
So he makes the statement about the Steele dossier, which exactly the point. It was completely made up. It was completely fabricated. They announced it. They proved it. It was all made up. And Bill Maher, who is so disconnected with reality, so disconnected with what's in front of him, goes to the excuse of, well, you watch too much Fox News. That's the only thing they have left. Well, you watch too much Fox News. Well, you must be a Trump supporter. Oh, you must be some sort of right-wing extremist. How do we even know that Zachary Levi voted Republican? How do we know that Zachary Levi voted Donald Trump? You don't. But that's the excuse. That's the rhetoric that people like Bill Maher, because they don't want to hear the truth, they don't want to be compromised in this position, so they deflect and make up some stupid bullshit excuse of, oh, you must be a Fox News viewer. Because they don't want to be compromised in the fact that Zachary Levi, an actor, is more in touch with reality and understands how bullshit this all is, and Bill Maher is still in this fable ground of the establishment is still good.
This is
I legitimately do not watch Fox News.
Well, you're getting this.
Hold on a second, Bill. Did they not all think that he was a Russian asset, and that Russia had fixed the election?
Okay.
Was that not what they were saying?
Okay, but I got to explain to you the difference.
Was it not?
And then we don't have to talk about this all night.
So Bill Maher, I got to explain to you the difference, and then we'll never talk about this again. This is someone in a cult. This is someone that's being told that they've been lied to. This is someone that doesn't want to hear the truth, that they're completely, in their own bubble, which is exactly what Bill Maher sadly is. He's stuck in his bubble for the last 20 years or so on with his talk show and his Hollywood lifestyle, that he's so disconnected with reality that he can't even hear any criticism whatsoever. He can't even hear the perspective of someone who's actually understandable about reality. That the fact the Steele dossier went nowhere. The fact that the Russian hoax scandal was exactly a hoax. They proven it was a hoax. And it was all to undermine the legitimacy of the 2016 election. And just like the video we just saw there, they weren't just grumbling, they weren't being silent about it. They purposely intended to amplify the fire, to further divide, so that we can discredit Donald Trump, so we can discredit the MAGA movement, so we can discredit people that are critics of the establishment. And Bill Maher doesn't want to hear it. Bill Maher is sitting there going, I don't want you to talk anymore. I'm going to tell you exactly why you're wrong, and then we'll never talk about this again. And that's why, sadly, Bill Maher is the dupe that he is. That's why Bill Maher has this HBO show that sounds exactly like MSNBC that you pay $12.95 a month for, and he's supposed to be the edgy comic. He's supposed to be the edgy comic, and this is the best he can come up with. I don't want you to talk about the Steele dossier. I don't want you to talk about this. I'm going to tell you exactly why you're wrong, and then we'll move on. Because God forbid Bill Maher actually having a real discussion about reality is too much for him. He wants you to still focus that Donald Trump is evil. Why not just bring back, Bobby De Niro? Why don't you bring him back on and talk about, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job now. Even though the guy is like, 80, 85 now? I'm pretty sure his acting days are kind of behind him now. And he's not going to lose his job. Bill Maher's not going to lose his job. They didn't lose their job during the first Trump presidency, so why would they lose it in the second one? We hope and dream, but it's not going to happen.